Thanks for doing this. It's great to see you.
Yes, sir. Welcome to Waco, Texas.
First time in Waco.
That's crazy. What do you think?
I love it.
Okay.
Everyone's incredibly friendly. When you're in the airport in Dallas connecting to Waco, they look at you and they say, "What do you?" Oh, Chip and Joanna. They know where you're headed.
Willie in Waco is like.
It's pretty great.
It's a show. It should be a show.
Yeah.
Oh.
Willie in Waco.
If only you had a network.
Yeah, I know.
Where you need
exactly.
to
We can
make
talk
some
later.
programming. We'll talk about that later. So let's talk first about this space. Because we are in what was once a grand ballroom and is about to be a grand ballroom,
Yeah.
thanks to you. Tell me about, Joanna, what you saw in this place, because this is a big leap.
Yeah. And I would start with what Chip saw in this place because the story of my life, poor Chip, because I get the credit for it, but Chip loved this building for years. And I'm like, I don't know, that looks it just looked dated. It looked hard, honestly. It's
Yeah.
like a big building. I'm like, let's just stick with houses. So for years, he's just always noticed this building on the corner. Well, he started kind of getting aggressive with, hey, I want to buy this thing. And I was like, Chip, we walk into it. I really was like, it scares me. Like all the carpet, it just feels kind of haunted a little bit. I don't know. I was just scared of it. There's a few things that Chip's bought in the past that felt haunted, but so I had a lot of resistance to it. And
turns out that the more haunted the property is, the better deal you can get on these things.
And he was like, Joe,
Quite the advantage.
it's a great deal. But finally I walked in one day just going, okay, Chip is passionate about this. I want to see what he's seeing. And I walked in and I saw it. And when I'm in the other mindset of like, I don't want it, it's easy for my mind to be like, nope. You know, I can just do that. But then when I want to know what Chip is seeing. So I walked in, he takes me up to this ballroom and I could see it. I could see the history. I saw the people in here. I saw the parties that were in here. And I was like, this place is really special. And so after that day, it's like, okay, I'm all in.
So what did you know about this building? Because I went back and was reading articles over the years.
Sure.
It's been on the market. We can't sell it. We're going to convert it. It's empty. They're having meetings in here once in a while.
Yeah.
Sure.
It didn't really have its purpose. What did you see in this place all those years ago?
You know, I've always had this kind of odd ability. I mean, the way she described it was really therapeutic to some extent because I've never heard you say it exactly that way. But for me, it doesn't take a process for me to get from point A to point what it could be.
Right.
I mean, I step into a place like this and I see past all the paint chips and all the decrepit hardwood floors. I sort of, to some extent, I mean, you know, I don't want to sound like a prophet, but I go back in time to when this thing was in its heyday, and I imagine, and here's the truth of the matter. I mean, I'm a business guy in my core, and I mean that not in this big shot business guy. I mean, just a small business guy, and I see this building, and it becomes real practical for me. If we could buy this building and then improve it for a certain amount of money, and those A plus B equal less than what we could sell it for at the end, it becomes like the simplest mathematical equation. If A plus B equals less than C, which is what we could sell this thing for if all hell broke loose, it becomes kind of fun for me. Like, I know I've got to buy this building at a low enough price to then put the improvement money into the building, and then for this thing to actually be worth more than what we've got in it. I mean, that's it. It's that simple. But then somehow along the way, I kind of see the hardwood floors, and I think that vision that you were just describing about the people that used to actually enjoy this space for what it was back in its glory days. I can see that activity occurring in a space like this, and I mean, you know, it's just like, and then it just takes money and time and effort to get it back to that spot. And then I think that's the $1 million question. Anybody could see an old building and then put an enormous amount of money into it and then have a property that's underwater that's worth less than what the market would bear. You know, for me, I get a little bit arrogant, like anybody can do that. I've got to do it exactly opposite of that. I got to buy it right, I got to put the right improvements into it, and I got to know for a fact that when this thing's all said and done, there's some equity in it at the back end of it. So all that to say, it's just, this is a fun one because it's big and it's gnarly, and I think big and gnarly kind of excite Joe and I. And then when you get to see this in a year and a half from now, and you see that ballroom activity that she's describing with the people and the energy, I mean, you're going to go, I can't believe I saw this before and after. But off camera, we were talking about you saying you walked in and kind of felt it a little
absolutely.
bit. And I want to encourage you, that's unique. I'd
Yeah.
say most people that walk into a building like this would say, quote unquote, you are crazy. Nobody wants to do this. And for you to say, I see it, you know, I mean, you're a step ahead.
Well, it's one thing to say I see it. It's another thing to say I'm going to do something about it, which is what you all do. So I was just saying, Joanna, I walked around downstairs, some of the different floors. And yes, it's spooky in some corners, but
It's a little dark,
but it's nostalgic too. It's from a time. So from a design point of view, how do you see yourself bringing some of that out?
Yeah, you know, the fact that there's 3 floors and you can start seeing how even over there, like, sorry, that's just hard, but even on the other side of this ballroom, there's this whole section where you're like, you can start seeing how this wasn't a hotel before, but how somehow you start gutting everything and you can see this footprint of a hotel. And I think what I got excited about with the hotel is, you know, obviously the lobby, like the first welcome. You walk in and what does that feel like? What is that first just sense when you step into the place? It's already, once you've been on this side of it and you're like, okay, I love the building, 'cause that's where we are now. It's like, oh, I can't wait for people to experience that magic when they step in and this thing is right. And so for me, it's really just highlighting the history, the nostalgia, all the stuff that you feel even in this kind of
rough state.
And then once we polish it up a bit, I think it's just going to come alive, and I think people are going to just feel like this is a really special place. But what I love about the rooms is like I get to design, you know, 3 or 4 different types of rooms, and then you just kind of mass, you know, I don't want every room to be completely different because really, to me, the highlight is the view, the trim, the windows, and stuff like that. I get to put a lot of energy in like 3 or 4 different styles, and then you get to just kind of mass it out in the rest of the rooms. I don't know, I think it's just gonna be fun. I think we've always dreamed of doing either like a small motel or a hotel, just because it's like, we love the hospitality side. People are coming to Waco. They're coming to visit the silos. There's other amazing businesses here in town that they're coming to visit, and so this just felt like the next step of, hey, if they're coming, let's offer them somewhere to stay. Let's host them.
We tried to host them at the farm.
We tried
and
that.
got a little complicated,
Just a little
right?
weird.
And so we were like, maybe plan B should be like, you know, a
small
boutique hotel.
Boutique hotel,
There you go.
Well, I mean, you have to have vision to see this, obviously, but also this is just a different animal from what you all have done before. I mean, it's one thing to flip the houses that you've flipped and even the silos, but just from a practical point of view as a builder, did you think like for a minute, all right, how are we gonna actually do this?
Yeah, again, it's like if there's not an element of that, I'm not interested. So if there's not an element of I can't do this or how are we gonna do this, I would argue Joe and I kind of shy away from, I don't wanna say the easy stuff, because surely we're not stupid, right? I mean, do we only do hard things?
I think we're a little stupid, but I also think we like to do hard things. And I think there's something about all of that that just, you know, there's got to be a little bit of naive, like being naive to like, let's do it. Chip, I would say.
We're very childish in that.
Yeah,
we think that everything's possible, and obviously a few things turn out a little harder than we expected. But the fact that this building is tough and challenging, and I would even argue a little bit outside the immediate bubble. I mean, we did that with the silos. You mentioned the silos. The silos were, you know, we've got a downtown strip, which is called Austin Avenue, which is really historic. That's where the castle's gonna be located, and it feels right. It's like being, you know, every town has these historic neighborhoods that have been around for a century, you know, or so, and that's kind of our Austin Avenue area. When we built the silos, it was a little bit off of that beaten path, and there was something about that that really attracted us to the property. Well, this is on the opposite end of that. So we got the silos, we got our heartbeat, which is Austin Avenue, and then on the other side is the Karen building. And we thought it would be cool to kind of bookend each of those neighborhoods and communities. And so part of that is even part of the challenge. Like, how do we get people on this side of town to experience this part of the pocket community? And I think this hotel will become a real anchor in that.
Have you guys thought about a name yet? Are you ready to go there? Or are you still working on the name of the hotel?
I want to call it like the Magnolia Hotel. My favorite number is 16. So she was smart enough, because I'm so passionate about the name Magnolia, which is the irony in that she came up with it. So it's not like this thing that I've got to have my way. This is her baby. You know, Magnolia was her original little gift shop on the, you know, the Bosque side of town, and little bitty 1,800 square foot, you know, shop. And so it just has become kind of our first child. I mean, we had that little business together before we had our now 5 children. And so she's just become so precious that I love the name of it. But she was smart enough and wily enough to go, well, what if the name was like Hotel 16? And I was like, well, there's something there.
Yeah, I had to like, hey, look
smart.
over here.
Yeah, you're
Old
very
baseball
wise.
number, so I've got
Is that
this-
what it is? I was going to ask you why 16. Baseball?
You have a number that it was just like, this is Willie Geist.
I
number.
played
probably
high
did when he
school
was, like,
football.
12.
Okay.
No, I'll still keep it.
Okay,
84.
okay.
It's
84.
high. So if you
All
want to
right.
use 84, it's
right.
not being taken.
84 's
You,
a
you have my authorization to use 84. It must be so cool too, Joanna, just to be in a position. You talk about having that shop in 2003,
Yeah.
that little place, to be in a position in your life where you can drive past this building and it's even possible that you could do something like this.
doubt
And you've worked hard to get to where you are, but that's a cool thing, I have to imagine.
It is, you know, and it's something that we don't forget about. I think we're reminded daily of these, and I don't know if it's because we have to do that to just keep ourselves grounded of like, man, we always joke, our favorite house was the one that was 800 square feet, and those were the sweetest times when we were really broke. Like just always going back to, remember, it was just a struggle. Everything was hard.
Yeah.
But there was something about that hard that just developed something in us that, I don't know, I think it just made us stronger people. Where
I would argue twofold. It's in our DNA. It's who we really were. So all of this hasn't changed any of that. We are still that couple that's like striving to just make it.
Yeah.
You know, but to your point, it's like, I'd say the variable is that this success happened a little bit late in Joe and I's life. So we already had a few kids on the ground. We had, you know, a half dozen years of marriage under our belt. You know, we had kind of grown and evolved into who we essentially were. And these babies on the ground, you know how that is. I mean, it just takes out that self-centered, arrogant, narcissistic kind of part of yourself. You're like, it's all about these kids. And so I think with this new like chapter of our life, it's less about, oh, now we can do these things because look what we've accomplished, and more about, I'm going to show these kids that there's nothing that's impossible. We can do hard things. We say this all the time. It's kind of a Gaines family mantra, like we do hard things. Well, I've got a little boy who's a freshman now playing football, and it's just like he comes home, our coach made us do this run and this thing. It's like, baby, how'd you think this was gonna go? You know, we do hard things is practical when you're out doing a bear crawl as a freshman on a football team, you know? And it's just like, for us, this is a hard thing, and I wouldn't be interested in it if it was any other way, you know?
And it's a lesson you can teach them that you worked for it, that you ground your way from that little shop to where you are right now.
And I think back to the little shop, when I think about that, you know, we couldn't afford flooring, so Chip was staining the plywood. Couldn't afford signage, so he like rummaged old letters that literally made up the word Magnolia and surprised me. It cost like $150.
Is that original sign?
Yes, that's the original sign.
I was looking at a picture of it today. Nice
that.
work,
And
Chip.
when I was done with that, and I'm no artist, but I literally was like, back to my point about this building, it just reminded me of a piece of art. And obviously subjective, and here I am, an idiot, what do I know? But when I see this building, it reminds me of a piece of art that I'm desperate to get back to its original glory. When I built that sign and put all those odd letters together, I mean, you know, I think arguably you could argue that it was corny.
Yeah, the A at the end is actually a G upside down. Don't look too close, but there's some things, you know, we were just like
compromises we had to make.
But it
we were on a
was
tight
so
budget.
sweet.
But the point that I'm trying to make, and I'm not doing a great job articulating this, I would say that the dreams that we had back when we were so broke and they revolved around a $30 or $50 or $100,000 house were as big to us then as this is to us now. And I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. We were dreaming big. It was just a different way. Nobody would have looked at it and said, oh, that's a big dream. But to Joe and I, we're like, well, it's a big dream when you got $50 in your pocket.
Right.
You know, this is a big undertaking
Sure.
for a couple that has $50 to their name.
Yeah.
And then you look at this big deal and you're like, hey, I mean, this could sink a ship, you know, in like the financial sense. But something about that drive for us is part of the magic.
It seems to me you two have always had that, even when you were a little bit broke, when you wanted to start that market and Chip's, and you said, I don't know if I should do this. I don't know if I know how to do this. It might fail. And Chip, with the same mentality, said, go do it, Joe. Go do it.
Chip was just born that way, and I was born the opposite, which was like, I'd like to just stay in this little cubicle and be safe the rest of my life. And then I went.
She kept showing me these CDs. If we put this $50 in this CD,
$50.
in 10 years, this will be $59.
I mean, that was exciting.
Hey,
No risk.
I've got a much more aggressive
Yes, you do.
financial plan. You're going to love this. Now, look, it could equal $50 becoming $0. There's lots of ways this ends that way. But if we play our cards right, our $50 will become more than $59 in the CD you're talking about.
So I don't know. I think just being married to the guy, it just rubs off on you. And then when you're on this side of it, you're like, oh, it's more fun this way. And there is risk. And even back then, when it was the risk of buying that little building and putting inventory in it, I didn't even know what I was doing. I was like, I sure hope this person buys, just even learning, like, you buy something for this much, you sell. I mean, I was learning everything, just business basics 101. I was not, this was new to me. But once you're on that side of it, there's just something, it's a contagious thing. And so I'm glad I'm not.
Be serious. If you could go back and be the safest person in the world.
Every now and then I still wish I was in that cubicle punching the clock. I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm going to the mall.
All right, fair enough.
The
but
mall.
You say it's more fun.
It is fun, but there's always that thing, because it's not my natural instinct, that fear is always creeping in. Like, oh, what if it's this thing? What if there's always that element of, if I fail, then what? And when I told Chip that, in 2003, I want to do this shop, but Chip, if I fail, then what? He's like, oh, we get back up and do something else. And when I heard that and almost had the freedom to fail, I was like, oh, well, if that's the scariest thing.
Right.
Even if it was a financial thing, his fearlessness really kind of just set me up to say, okay, I think we can do it. And yeah, we have failed. There are some things that we've done that we look back and like, well, that was a stupid idea.
Sure.
But I think even in the failure, just the value that we learned, not in the money side that we've lost, but the value we learned from that to then take into the next thing, it's just, that's invaluable. So for me, it's like, you're never really losing. If you're going for it and you're moving forward, you can't lose, even if it isn't something you're doing long term. Just that lesson and everything you're learning in those opportunities, I think, are the most valuable things.
When you were just saying all those things, my heart just burst.
I call him Coach. He's coached me.
Forget Coach. I'm
Now I'm
talking
a
about,
little
like,
monster.
in a much more romantic sense.
Yeah, he wasn't trying to be a coach
cute.
there.
Like, I could see Crew having a little sibling.
Oh, geez.
And me being like, I love this woman.
Now,
right?
Willie.
I didn't bring it up.
Another subject.
Chip's pushing the agenda here.
Chip will, when I'm 50, Chip's gonna want more kids. Just know this is gonna be like the headline forever.
Gosh.
Joe's pregnant again.
For the
So
record,
sad. We've gotten almost odd about this. Every time we have a child, it becomes like a national news cycle.
Every
so
time we have a
sadly, now I'm
child.
like, babe, business is down.
Wait,
I mean,
stop.
we need to bump our productivity, our profitability. I mean, we might need to have another child here. I don't see another out here to get this much media attention.
part of the business plan.
Chip with children is like business. There's never too many. I'm like, Chip, I think we've got enough business. I think we're good. That's how Chip is with children. He's like, I just think we can keep having them. I mean, I think Chip just loves a full plate.
I love a full.
It helps when you don't have to carry the child for
Yeah.
10 months, right?
That
It's a little
is true.
easier to be
That is
aggressive
true.
on
That
something
is
like that.
a much better position that I find myself in.
And when you come to Waco and you walk around, even in the airport, there's a brochure for the Chip and Joanna tour. There's all that going on. There are these sort of historic spots, and one of them is the tire shop where the two of you met, your father's tire shop.
Are you serious?
Wow.
Wait, that's so cute. Who's doing the tour?
So there's a whole tour. Yeah.
I appreciate Willie bringing this to our attention. We'll send out some
Like, hey,
cease and
can
desist
someone
letters
call
after
the
this.
airport and have them remove that tour?
That's the
There's
whole
one
thing.
of the tire shops.
So,
That's
but
so
that,
cute.
but
Is
Jeff,
the farm on there?
I don't think so.
Okay,
No, I
just
don't think
wondering.
they
Okay.
violate your privacy.
What tour is this?
Oh,
But
babe.
for people who don't know where this all began in your father's tire shop when you were getting your brakes fixed. Is that right?
Yes.
Yep.
And is the story true that that day you said, "Oh, she's the one"?
I feel like that was more your thing.
He's like, no.
But
No, it was not.
No, it was my thing.
You wish it was
Hey,
my thing.
I'll be completely clear. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
There was this family business, this tire shop you're referring
Yes.
to, and they had a family photo like some family businesses
Sure.
do behind the cash register.
Right.
And there were these beautiful 3 Stevens daughters. So Jerry Stevens and Nan Stevens, my precious mother and father-in-law, had these gorgeous 3 daughters. And I would just look at this family photo and be like, man, if I could find any 3 of these young ladies, I would just be like the happiest person on the planet. So it was definitely like in that way. But when Joe and I struck up a conversation, she's always been like a bit of a fly on the wall. I mean, it takes a little bit of effort to kind of draw out like her heart and her personality and these kind of things. And I'm sort of opposite. You know, I'm like, my personality and my heart are like right on my sleeve, so you like it or you don't, take it or leave it. And so it took a little bit of dancing as I was pursuing Joe for her to kind of open up little by little. But I can definitely say the more she opened up, the more I liked it.
Now, what did you think, Joanna, when he says, I saw your picture on the wall and I just had
I
to
always
have
just
you?
call him, you're just a creeper. The first thing he said to me, because I did these local commercials for my dad, I'd hold my hands like this. I was just nervous. But I did these like local 30-second spots for him.
Do it. Like,
do you remember?
Come on. I remember at one point I said, we even give you a free ride to work.
Oh my gosh.
That's a great service.
I do remember at one point I had the line of like, we'll even change your lug nuts for you. and all the radio stations
That's when you won his
would
heart.
play it and be like, I think she just said lug
That's
nuts.
so funny. Right when you said that, I got the chills back to my 20s.
I was like, Dad, were you writing the script? You don't have your daughter say, we'll even change your lug nuts. Sorry.
How old are you at that point?
I was like 16.
Oh my gosh.
I worked for my dad for 10 years.
Right.
And I was going to take over the
fire stuff.
That was, you know, he had 3 daughters and I wanted to be the one that was, I'll carry on your name. So I was training for that.
I mean, from a dream perspective, she was this girly girl, but in this real masculine. I mean, every person that you shook hands with at the tire shop had dirt underneath their nails, and I was kind of that kind of guy. I mean, I was a real blue collar, hardworking dude. So I mean, me and these guys were shooting the bull, and then her mom struts around like the Queen of England. She's got these 3 beautiful daughters that literally have just come back from like a manicure, running this tire shop with their dad. And it was just, I mean,
I always loved being at the counter because a guy would walk up and I was like, okay, what size tire are you needing? And they'd look at me like, okay, well, can you get someone who can actually, and I would be like, tell me what kind of car you have. And I'd be like, a 235, 65. Like I loved the challenge of like shocking them.
I know you're a happily married man, but I mean, that doesn't get you a little excited. You're not living.
I could sell a set of tires. Will you stop?
I'm not trying to get him in trouble.
What are you drinking?
There's no trouble. I just get, I see where you're coming from.
That's what I'm saying.
But I'm telling you, I knew about cars, and because in my mind, I'm just going to run this place, so I better, you know, so that was like my school. So for Chip, it was one day I was walking out, and he's walking in, and we just bump into each other, and he was like, hey, you're that girl in the commercials.
I thought
and
I was
right off the bat, I'm like, oh, Lord,
I mean, you talk about a real fantasy. I looked up at the family photo thinking maybe the person that I thought was on the family photo was going to be removed, and there she is in real life. But it was really her, and then I confirmed the photo still had 3 daughters, and I was like, what the freak? My prayers have been answered.
At first I was like, this guy's kind of just one of those typical, you look at the commercial. And so I sat, because I was like, now what? So I just sit out there.
Even as a somewhat recognizable person, when people do that to us, it's always this eye roll thing. And so it's just like, I thought it was the most original, unique comment I could have possibly
made. And I hear it every day when they come into the shop. So in my mind, it's like, steer clear of that one. So I was just kind of like, But then he started asking really interesting questions, and I realized this is the first time I've had a conversation with someone where I feel like I'm actually getting to know myself better, because it's like, well, that was an interesting way to ask that. And so we just ended up talking for like an hour and a half, and he left.
Nice.
And I thought, oh, that was just a great customer. That's sweet. Then the next day I get on my desk, Chip Gaines called, here's his number, and I was like, oh, stalker.
So you hung around the tire shop for an hour and a half just chatting her up?
Just chatting her up. And I mean, you know, back in those days, I didn't have a lot going on, so an hour and a half was definitely...
He was running his businesses.
Oh, poor Joe. I kept telling her I had all these businesses. I had a little wash and fold business, I had a lawn business, I had a fireworks business. I literally had all these businesses. And so because her dad ran a profitable business, she assumed that I having 3 of them meant 3 times the profit.
Right.
And I was like, babe, all of these are not for profits. None of these make any money. But she didn't know. I mean, I carried this pocket. I always had all my money.
Because he didn't really have like a bank account, so all his cash was in. So our first date, he like stands up, and I'm like, what's this guy doing to pay for the bill? Pulls out this wad of cash. which now is like, it was like $101 bills and then like a 20. And I was like, that dude's loaded.
Little did you know that was every dime he had was in that
Little
pocket.
did I know.
So dumb.
I know.
For the oldest
this
trick in the
guy's
book.
rich.
It all worked. All the moves worked. Look at you now,
I
happily
mean it.
married.
I had all the money I had
In the world was in your
gosh.
pocket.
And it wasn't in this gaudy, arrogant thing. I wasn't like this, this New York mafia type that was like out flashing it around. I just really always carried a lot of money in my pocket. I had employees that I was always having to pay in cash in some cases, and I was always trying to buy something, for a discount. So if you've got a little cash on your pocket, somebody will sell you something for $50 instead of $100. I just kind of always had this cash reserve. And I remember that date, and I stood up because you can't sit down and take out $879 in cash. It's odd.
In singles.
It falls out on the ground. It looks like you just came back from a strip club or something.
Wait.
And so I had to stand up, and I was trying to be respectful about it. So I turned my back to it and counted out the money, but
Caught my eye.
I think that was part of the show. You're saying it was a practical question. You understood. That was the show, right?
Part of the show. It was part of the show.
And it worked. Look at you now.
Worked.
Look at you now. Oh, that's so funny. So I'm just leaping ahead to the show. So you're cruising along here. You got started some businesses. You're doing pretty well for yourselves, and then you get a phone call from HGTV. What was the connection there? I know you had a design blog.
Yeah,
but
and
how did they
by
even
design
find
blog,
you?
it was literally like 9 people that followed me. So I don't even know how anyone saw the pictures. And it was one of the houses we were living in, and it was just the before and afters. And someone from a production company, High Noon, who works with HGTV, her name was Katie, and she called my cell phone and said, I saw these before and afters. I see you and your husband work together. Hey, what do you think about if we came to Waco for a couple days?
Spent a week with you.
And shot stuff. And I was like, what? And so I called Chip, and this is a true story. He said, do not call that person back. It's a scam. How much did they say you have to pay for them to film you? And I was like, I don't think they.
This is sad.
It's a scam.
You talk about like my instincts, because I'm like a live or die by my instincts thing. So this building, I've got these gut instincts. You watch, it'll play out this way. I mean, for the biggest opportunity of our lifetime.
It was like a Dumb and Dumber moment. It's like, I think we're gonna go that way.
I mean, I was adamant. And Joe was like, I think she's telling the truth. I was like, babe, she didn't say anything about sending her $5,000 in advance. Because I went, honestly, in all honesty, in high school, I was reached out by like this face shot. What would you call it?
Like a
model?
headshot?
Yeah,
like a modeling agency.
And so I went to the mall.
At the mall. Oh
I didn't know. I go.
Would.
They take pictures of you in your underwear.
Babes.
I didn't know what was happening, baby. It was a lot of yes sirs and no ma'ams. I was just there along for the ride. And then at the end of this production, which you think like you're so hot that you're gonna get this like opportunity of a lifetime
for
to
the
like
mall,
model in Paris, or at the time it was like
or for pennies.
Not Donnie. Mark Wahlberg was like a full deal in
Calvin
New York.
Klein,
I was hot, and I literally saw it. I was like, maybe. And so when you get to the end of it, then they're like, well, $500 today, and then equal payments of $500 for 3 months, and you're like, I don't have any of this money. How am I supposed to do this? And I was positive that these two things were somehow synonymous, but Joe.
Glad I didn't.
Well, it is a
talk to
weird
you.
phone call if you've got 9 people following your blog for some big production company. Like,
how in the world did she see that?
Yeah.
So it was and then they literally a few weeks later they come in and it was.
They were legit. I mean, all the equipment, and the sound guy has been with us for now, 7 years. He's been consistently with us, and I remember him. His name's David, and he had this sound little bag, and he sat out on our curb, and I mean, it was 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm looking out, going, "What is this guy doing?" And he was sitting there messing with the sound equipment, kind of getting ready for the day.
Yeah.
And real quickly, it went from this has to be a scam to, wow, what an opportunity to be a part of something like this. And they rolled in with the cameras and the sound equipment, and Joe and I were off to the races.
and it's a crazy thing, I have to imagine, for them to put a camera in front of you and say, okay, be TV stars.
Dude.
Be funny, be charming.
He was the
and
worst.
do it on command.
He was the worst.
Willie, I didn't know this. I had an actual phobia of cameras. But, before you've seen a snake, you don't know whether you have a snake phobia or not. And this dude rolled up with these big cameras like this, and this red light pops on this thing. And I mean, it was like a Volkswagen on this guy's shoulder. And he was like, hey, tell me your name. And I was like, it was just like instant.
I thought he was joking.
I was scared
It's
to
Chip.
death.
Right.
Like, look,
Right.
you have to hey, stop talking. I really thought this is going to be the Chip show, and I'm really introverted, so to me it's like, Chip, just carry it, and I'll be in the background like,
Making pancakes.
He literally stopped talking. He went behind the camera. He couldn't breathe.
Had an anxiety
Did
attack.
you really?
True story. I got behind the camera, and before, we all became friends-ish after a few days. It was a great experience, great people. And as we were rocking and rolling, I was behind the camera going, hey, now tell me, what does that button do? Like when you push that, he was like, well, that's zooming in and out on the show you're supposed to freaking be in, you moron.
And that was your way to get out of the shot.
And so I'd be like,
so you're alone.
Chip and I like this house because so it was just like the worst. We were like the worst.
We were in these like fights. Joe and I are like mad
I'm
at
like
each other.
looking at him. I'm literally giving him the stink eye, like, you better get back over it. Because I have all these kids that are around me. It just looked like,
oh my gosh.
It was so bad.
I mean, really, the kids were holding on to her leg because they're terrified.
They were having mini anxiety attacks.
Walking through the house,
And then there's
pointing
me.
out features of this remodel we had
the
done
worst.
with 2 kids on each leg and a husband behind the camera asking the camera operator what certain buttons of his equipment were.
So 3 days into it, he came to us and was like, hey guys, we don't have much. So listen, we've got to figure something out. Can you, Joe, will you surprise Chip with something? And then I didn't know this. They go to Chip and they're like, hey, for this last day we're here, can you just do something to just get a little more emotion out of your wife? Chip, can you surprise Joe with something? And Chip, you don't ask Chip to surprise me because it's like, I bought you a hotel.
Yeah.
Ooh,
This building was a surprise to some extent, wasn't it?
I rarely tell Chip my dreams now because he just goes and gets it. And I'm like, well, I didn't really mean that though. I didn't really. But so Chip, they ask him to surprise him. I come up with this dumb idea that's like, oh, I'll do a frame about all the houses we lived in and it'll be like the addresses because we had no money. So it was like $20.
It's going to be like a picnic, Willie. She was going to give me this thing at the end of a picnic.
But I was like, that's the surprise we can't afford.
Right.
Chip was like, oh, I got a surprise. He literally gets online, has been looking at a houseboat online. So sight
Because
unseen.
we're in between houses, and so I was thinking, hey, the family on this houseboat
For the
would
summer.
be funny. Like
Nothing
we'd
like a
live here
bunch
for
of
the-
young kids on a boat.
None of them could swim.
Good thinking, Chip.
None of them could swim. He like pushes buy now, buys the thing. The next day, only the way he can do it, it rolls up so they surprise me. We're at the
Got her
lake.
blindfolded at the lake.
And I think we're about to have this picnic moment with the sunset, and
You've
we're
got
going to
your frame.
surprise each
Yeah.
other. And I'm blindfolded, and he takes the blindfold off, and there's this semi-truck and this boat with all these holes in it. I mean, it literally looked like it had been shipwrecked.
Turned out it was not seaworthy.
And I was like, oh, and Chip was like, ta-da, and I
did.
was
said ta-da in this real
mad.
insecure way. I go,
Because I know how much money we have in the, I mean, I did all
Yeah.
the numbers for our business, I knew how much we had, and we had $20, and I just bought a frame. He bought this boat, so I'm just mad.
Oh my
So
God.
what happened to the boat, the houseboat?
The boat, we got into a tiny legal predicament,
okay.
and we lost.
The
So we
pictures-
got to keep the boat. Turns out if you buy something, it's like the buyer beware thing. I found that
I
out the
didn't
hard
read
way.
the tiny print, but the pictures were from like 1988 when the boat was pristine.
It was dirty. I did get done dirty,
So-
but
yeah.
we broke out of the shell because now we're in this boat that we can't afford. I've had to rob
And I'm
Peter to
mad.
pay Paul, and whichever one I owed the money to was like, at the house. And so here we are in this boat, and I'm like, dang, this is not the boat I agreed to buy. And it really wasn't. This was not part of the surprise. This was
Right.
part of my surprise. And so, but as Joe got off because she kept saying, send it back. And I was like, baby, send it back where? We own this
Back
boat.
the houseboat.
It's like, this is a.
Well, and the
we
semi
own
guy
this.
couldn't drop it because it didn't float. So I'm not joking.
Oh.
He was gonna put it at the dock, so it was at the dock, but he's like, it won't float. So if I let this thing off, it will sink. So the semi guy is like screwed because he's like, I have a boat that won't. We had nowhere to put it.
Right. So we had to literally on the fly build this little temporary platform for this boat to sit on dry land. It was like Gilligan's Island. I mean, this thing just sat awkwardly, not in the water because it couldn't float, and all that to say, but my point is, Joe and I started rocking and rolling. I get this guy that I bought the boat from on the phone, so I'm wearing this dude out. I'm talking to the guy's boss who owns the trucking company that brought it to us. And I was
Yeah.
like, you've got to take this back where it came from. My wife's gonna leave me, and I've got these kids I adore. I mean, this is terrible. And he's like, I don't care. We're dropping the boat no matter what. But all this happened, and it's sort of all of a sudden that red dot on that guy's big Volkswagen camera kind
Yeah.
of disappeared into the backdrop. And Joe and I I'd say for the first time, we're kind of ourselves.
Yeah.
And
as Chip was arguing, I went in the boat because I thought, oh, it's a done deal. I have to get my head around it.
Yeah.
So I start imagining what it can be. So I'm like, okay, so listen, if we're going to live in this. So then I start seeing it and start getting a little excited. I didn't tell Chip at that point, but I was like, this could kind of be fun. So I start sketching, daydreaming. It's just, I don't want to be surprised anymore. But that's how it happened.
And so did you feel that in the moment, like, oh, this is working now?
No.
Or were you just being yourselves and then later you said, oh, this works?
The cameras were gone, and it was now problem solving. We got to figure this out.
Yeah.
But the funny thing that happened, we did not feel it. Then I felt devastated because it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like the last day of this filming thing, I blew it. Like I thought this was going to be fun and romantic, and the surprise really wasn't to screw us. It was to be, this is a fun project and we can take it on. But it was not that. We really got screwed, and Joe and I are having to manage through that total natural organic disappointment. Now kind of force-fed organic, for sure.
Yeah.
But all that to say, and we were just, I was devastated because I was like, man, Joe wanted this. I blew it. I thought this was going to work. It didn't. And so finally we get off the boat and we walk towards the truck, and this guy's got this camera on us the whole time, and he's walking backwards, shuffling. And we're like, and I literally in complete disgust and defeat, I was like, well, hopefully that made for some good television, almost like screw you kind of thing. And this guy puts his camera down, big old smile. He goes, bro, if we do our job, you just landed yourself a reality television show.
Did he say that?
Yeah, just like that.
Wow.
And Joe and I both got the chills, and we're like, wait, that? What was interesting about that? I just got screwed. There's no way I can ever make this $15,000 back. How is that entertaining?
Right.
And his point was just, hey, y'all were natural. You were yourselves. You forgot about the camera. All the normal stuff that you would think about prior to buying a houseboat happened because of that freaking houseboat. So I tell my friends, and I actually do this little seminar. I only charge people like $9 or $10.
I wish you
and
did
I
seminars.
teach them about how really bad things can be really smart if you just filter it through the right
Like a houseboat.
circumstances.
Buying a
I
sinking
actually wrote a
houseboat.
You should do a whole book on all the stupid things that just were stupid.
Baby, what? I did write a book and did that.
But those were like stupid things that turned out good. What about the stupid things that were just stupid?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I wrote a book. I don't mean to go on and on about myself and brag all the time.
It's fine.
But it's called Capital Gains, the smart things I learned doing stupid stuff. And this is a perfect example. It appears
was a
stupid
really good
to
example.
people who aren't smart enough to decipher stupidity versus geniality.
Yeah.
Well, that
Geniuses.
moment with the houseboat, which got you the show, gets to the success over 5 seasons of the show, doesn't it? Where you could just be yourselves.
Yeah.
Because people are like, why is that show so good and why is it so popular? There are a bunch of shows where people are renovating houses and they're likable enough people, but there's something different about your show, obviously, given the response to it. Are you able to put your finger, Joanna, on why it took off the way it did?
No.
I can't.
I
mean, you're gorgeous,
No.
so that might be
That's
something.
not something.
But-
I even, because when we think about ourselves.
If I were at home watching television, I'd watch a show with you.
Well, because you were that creeper who loved the 3 sisters behind the register.
Maybe if
No
we had a
one's
show
surprised
with
by
your
that.
2 sisters. I mean, the ratings would just skyrocket.
No.
Maybe I was dragging this thing down all these years.
But Willie, driving here, we both were like, can you believe Willie Geist is in Waco,
Oh, come on.
Texas?
I
I'm
swear
not-
to you.
It still has
Look at
not.
you.
It hasn't settled in that people would come from New York City to interview us in a, broke down building. Like it doesn't, and I don't ever want it to sink in. I don't ever want it to become normal. Like I think once it's there, then it's just, I want to stay in this place of I don't get it.
Bewilderment.
Yes, and even with the show, we don't know what, I'd like to say there was just hope. There was, you see these families, you see these projects that just looked daunting, they looked hard, and that's when we love to step in and say, hey, let's help you see the finish line. Let's help you get there.
Sure.
And there's just something about that I feel like people resonated with. There's just hope in the show. There's the hope of seeing what it becomes and not just the house. I think it's just, how maybe we problem solve together, but even seeing these families knowing we can walk away and now they get to settle into their home. I don't know, I think there's just something that's so special about that. But again, as far as putting my finger on, no idea.
What about you, Chip? Have you thought about it at all?
I mean, I would argue if it's not her being hot, then it must be me.
You
But-
being hot, or
Well,
just you in general?
Just me in general. Yeah. Back in high school, back when I did that headshot thing, absolutely.
Oh, back to the
me
mall.
being
Yeah.
hot.
You're so
But
weird.
now I'm pretty
I always tell 'em I
self-aware.
wouldn't have
I've
liked
seen
him in high
myself in
school.
the full length mirror, and I'm like, no way is anybody tuning into this because I'm hot. But you know, funny and charming and
I mean, you ran through walls.
rustically handsome
I like that.
could work.
Hey,
But why, how the show resonated, I don't know. We've been asked that question a lot, and we almost always turn it back to the question asker. Like, you would have a better opportunity answering that question than for us, because for us, it's like watching family videos of yourself. It's
Yeah.
like, of course you're in love with the family and the video that you're watching, but other people watching that wouldn't be equally as interested, you know? So
I think
how
part of
was
it too, guys, is your humility about it. I think honestly, maybe it's because you don't have a TV and you don't even know the impact you're having. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm sure you feel it when you go to Celebration and you see the crowds that come into town. But that must be a crazy thing to know that people from across the country and around the world are flying into Dallas, catching a connection to Waco, to come and buy things at Magnolia, or maybe catch a glimpse of you two.
Sure.
Is that just a nuts
It's
proposition?
a nuts thing. And we were yesterday, we were at the silos, and I was looking down. I was like, Chip, I'm going to go walk out there. He's like, what? I'm like, I'm going to go walk out there. I'm going to go meet some people. So we walk out. I walk out with a few friends, and I asked people where they're from, and it was LA, New York, Atlanta. And I'm sitting there going, what? Like, people planned an actual weekend trip to come here from all over the map. There wasn't, I really thought it'd be like San Antonio, Dallas, like close.
Sure.
And it was people from all over. And I think I left that when I went back upstairs, like, this is crazy that people would come to this event, even Celebration, the fact that they'd come, drive here, fly here, make plans, and it just be a thing for them, I think just was really, it felt like, wow, this is special.
But it's a crazy honor.
It's
and I think
total
that's,
honor.
You know, you say humility, and I appreciate that, because from my perspective specifically, it's like, I've never been a humble guy. You know, that's not a thing that you'd naturally assume about me. But in this experience, it is so humbling, because you really know there's something about these folks coming to town to get a glimpse of us, to your point, experience some of the things that we've built, that's just, it becomes like a complete honor. I mean, it's just like you feel a whole lot less about, I want to beat my chest like King Kong, and more like, I want to thank people. I want to say, thanks for watching the show, man. That meant the world to us, for us to put ourselves out there in that way. And on Tuesday nights, Joe and I would go to a friend's house, hold hands, have popcorn, and watch it just like everybody else was watching it. We'd watch and go, this is cute, man. This is a great, fun show about a family. It just happens to be about our family. So again, it makes sense that we like it. It makes sense that my grandmother likes it, but why does everybody else like it? And that's the part that every Tuesday night we would leave just going, I cannot believe people are watching this. This is mind-boggling. And it just kind of, I don't know, sets us up in a really healthy place to where we just feel extremely thankful.
And then there are these crazy moments along the way. We were talking about the last time I saw you was in April at the Time 100. So you find yourselves, a builder and a designer from Waco, Texas, on a list with heads of state and Taylor Swift.
Stop it.
And activists
Stop
and
it.
athletes.
No.
And there you are in that same room, and Taylor Swift looks up and
Oh my gosh.
points at you guys because she wants to meet you.
Stop.
How do you process moments like that?
You can't.
Yeah.
We couldn't.
He's trying to, what's the lady's name that would always make people cry in the end?
Barbara Walters.
Walters.
He's trying to Barbara Walters.
She called and gave me a list of questions.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, that hurt in a real, like, little boy kind of place. I mean, Willie, we walked into this room. We knew we were invited. I mean, we knew that we were technically supposed to be there. This is actually a funny story. We get out, we're in this line of basically limousines.
Yeah.
You know, they're just vans, but you know, you kind of feel like, you know, a limousine at a prom kind of an
Right.
event. So you're getting dropped off. We have to wait in line, obviously, as each individual person that's been invited to this thing gets out of their car. And so here we are, and we get pulled up. And the first guy I see, did I tell you this? Do you know who the first guy I
No.
saw? Okay, so the first guy I see when I get out of my little van is literally Ninja, the gaming legend.
Right.
Well, I only sort of know the guy, but my kids are like infatuated with this
course.
dude. So
Yeah.
I see him, he's got this purple hair, he's got his beautiful date on his hip, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's Ninja. I'm gonna go get a picture with this guy. So I go get a picture, Joe and I and Ninja, send it to my boys. All the kids are freaking out about this experience. You know, Meryl Streep's there, and here my kids are geeked out about Ninja. But all that to say, it was just like it set in really quickly and very overwhelmingly that it was like, what are we doing here?
Felt like we had crashed a wedding and we were like kids and we were like, oh,
Yeah.
don't let them see us.
The whole time. I forgot how to speak English.
Oh, we forgot a lot of things. I think the second we stepped out of the van, we saw all the people that like take pictures, and we were like,
Scary.
in my mind, literally, I'm like, oh, they're not gonna be like, who are those two jokers? So we step out and they start saying our name. I'm like, oh gosh, they know us. They're like, hi. Then we get to this moment
And
of like
people do,
red
they
carpet.
yell at you.
Yeah.
Chip and Joanna,
Yeah.
Look over here, yeah.
So I'm literally thinking, oh, we know some people in New York.
So Chip's like trying to make eye contact and like find the person that said his name. Like, Chip, let's keep walking. But then we get to that moment where there's the red carpet.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, I don't want to do that. I wanted to go the other way. And she goes, this is the only way in. And I go, oh crap. So we had to walk on the red. No one trained you on like how you stand, how you don't smile or smile.
Tell them about
No
that,
idea.
that girl. Tell
Oh,
me that.
Sophia Bush. Yes.
She was adorable. So
she
she and Joe
taught
become
me.
kind of, you know, Twitter or Instagram friends. So
Right.
sweet Sophia hangs out with Joe and teaches her like how to stand
And I'm
in
like,
these certain
oh,
ways.
Is that right?
which felt, everything just felt awkward.
But it was
Again, I
precious
just would
watching
rather
her
be
do
in
that.
sweats.
She was giving you the poses,
She
the
was
Hollywood
teaching
poses.
me how to
I mean,
be.
this hip thing, and right when she did it, I was like, you do look hotter somehow. How is that?
Hotter than, like
She did. She
just
took
kinda-
out her makeup and made a few little modifications to Joe's beautiful face. And I was
No,
like, where is
so-
Sophia
And did
Bush
you have
been
your
our whole life?
poses too, Chip?
No, she was like, there's nothing we can do with this. She did.
Chip
She,
Lost
poses
cause.
like arm up and just like,
she
we
kept saying,
made
hey,
it.
have you seen the Saturday Night Live skit to where Chris Farley falls into that
the table.
dining room table? She
Yeah.
was like, if you could do more of that, we might be able to get you out of here. And I was like, I can do that.
So everything was just overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like, wow, this is a different caliber. Like, this is two people from Waco. We just didn't feel, we just felt, we weren't prepared. Like, we were literally thought, well, this could be a fun party. And then the second we stepped, we're like, oh, shoot.
We were not
This
prepared.
is a big deal.
Somebody asked us a question about what art had inspired us.
I think it
over
was
the last
Willie.
6 months. No,
I
it
would
wasn't.
never ask Chip a question like that because I knew he couldn't.
He was like, oh, what Twinkie did you eat last?
Wait, can I tell you though, for real? I think you did interview, and you said if you could say one thing on stage and speak on it for 60
gosh,
minutes.
this
This
is-
is
Oh,
the funny.
yeah.
This is true. Let me
This was
tell
a
you
good
what's
one,
going
though.
on.
And I've been
So
messing
in
with
my
it for
mind,
months.
he jacks with me. So like
Yeah.
in my mind, well, I have blacked out. So even seeing you there
Blacked
was really
out.
like, oh, home, Willie, please help us. Take us away.
She said she tried to hug you in this really odd way and that you were a little put off by it. I don't know.
But you asked the question, and my mind is just blank. And I'm not feeling super. At this point, I'm like, what are we doing here?
You look gorgeous.
Well, thank you. But
should have felt confident.
I was blank, and so you said, if you
Yeah.
could talk about anything, and I
and
remember.
not prepare and do
Yeah.
it for an hour.
And I said
says confidence.
but I didn't mean like on being confident.
Yes.
I meant like confidence in who you are and what you're meant to be. But
Right.
I only stopped at confidence. I was like,
Confidence.
confidence.
And I was like, oh yeah. You could just randomly
As
give
I
an
was
hour speech
the most
about
insecure,
confidence.
and Chip after that was like, confident. And I'm
Exactly.
like, but I didn't mean confidence.
The rest of the deal, I'm doing my push-up bra, going, oh, confidence. Oh, look at me, I'm freaking hot. And I was like, what is wrong with you?
We'll give you a
That was
pass
a
on that
rough
one.
moment.
That was a crazy night.
remember what I said,
Well,
but mine was
I
fun.
do remember
You
when
said
you
buying
came
and
in.
selling or
We had our little Today
yeah.
Show corner.
Okay.
And I could see you guys just go,
Yeah,
and
sad.
come and
We
like sit
saw
in the chair.
someone
Can we hang out
new.
here for a
Yeah.
little bit?
We
Yeah.
didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
We wanted to
It was
just
sad.
party.
We
with you.
had like 5 or 6 other people you had to get to, and Joe and I literally would not leave your little
Like,
booth.
Well, those are like 2-minute things, which is a weird thing
Yes.
anyway. So,
Okay.
but I wanted you to be able to hang out and get a
it was
drink or
sad.
something
Yes.
at least.
We needed
But
some
the
shots.
truth about that night, and I said this to you earlier, is there were as many people in that room impressed by you and looking at you as you were there. I mean, Taylor Swift. What was the
Stop.
gesture?
Stop.
Show me the gesture.
And literally did it, and I could see the heart clearly. And I was like, it's like me. I don't really know how to do this naturally.
No,
you
it's
know?
not down there. That's for
No.
sure.
Well, you know, with the
Well,
like,
with the
like
pregnancy
look, I'm
poses.
pregnant, and the
Back
guy's
in
behind
the
me.
Yeah,
early
yeah.
2000s,
I
you
suck
did
at that. Mine's Joe's always like, that's like an
Because your
octagon.
fingers are tiny.
Well, babe, you don't have to go into all
Well,
that.
show Willie. It's okay. You talked about some other things.
Well, all I know is we've got 5 children. Everything must be all right in some way.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Sorry, well, you didn't have to be personal like that.
Yeah,
Trying to
you really
hurt
went to a
feelings.
dark place
Look.
there for a second. But she
Taylor
gave you
Swift walks in,
the Earhart, not
does an
to you.
No, give me a break. Even as I saw her, I literally was like, oh my God.
She did Earhart, and as dorky as we are, we're like, I wonder who she's Earharting, and we look behind us, and we're like, wait, there's no one but who? Me? It was a sweet moment.
It was amazing, and I mean the energy that Taylor brings with her.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, as powerful as all those
Yeah.
people. I mean, the
The
Rock.
room shifted.
Yes.
The Rock
She walked
is
in.
not but, 20 feet from us. And when she walks in the room, all the oxygen gets kind of sucked to her little scenario, her little environment, and the rest of us are just like gasping for air. I mean, it was really fascinating.
I know, I was
for
in
her
that
to
room
do that
too.
thing, I don't know how I didn't faint.
I did not get an Earhart.
You
to
didn't?
be clear, I think
Okay.
you exclusive Earhart for the Gaineses.
I knew it.
Yeah.
And it's when she did that to you, I literally was like, Joe's gonna make it. She's gonna be like a big deal, and I'm gonna be like her. I don't know. I'd be your like road manager.
Carrier bags,
Yeah,
things
carry
like
some
that.
stuff.
Which is what you're doing at the hotel. Is that my understanding? The
Basically,
bellhop.
I'm gonna be the bellhop.
I
And
saw the
even
outfit.
Perfect little red thing. I mean, back to my point. I
Scared
saw something like that at the front of this hotel the first day I laid eyes on it. I could see the elevator operator. I
Cute.
could see the employees bustling around. I mean, it really did feel like a step back in time a little bit.
So how do you, given what we're talking about right now and the way your lives have changed, how do you keep it normal for your kids?
Yeah.
Because I think you've done a great job of that. I just don't know how you've done it. You know, I think when you ended the show, you said part of it was to just kind of circle up as a family and focus on that. How do you, the range of kids is
Yeah.
14?
14's our
Yeah.
oldest, and then
right.
one's our youngest. Yeah.
How do you keep it normal for them when they're at school and they're Chip and Joanna's kids and all that? How do
Yeah.
you work on that?
It's nice that all the kids are homebodies, and I don't know, it's not like we instilled that, it's just they naturally love being home. I don't know if it's just the farm and that you have everything that I think any kid would want on the farm. You've got the animals, you've got the land, you can just go outside and be a kid. That I think being home for them is their favorite thing. So it's not like they want to go out a ton, and even when we go out, we're in the car and we're like, hey, if whether I'm in Target or at a restaurant, hey, if people come up to us, remember they're coming into town. Like we always explain it to them. They've come into town to come experience the silos, to see Waco, and since they're coming for this, we have to, hold on, how am I saying this? You can help me. The fact that they're coming into town for this, we're going to be pleasant, and we're not, and it's not a. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say.
You're gonna be gracious.
You help.
Plan
Yeah.
B.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Plan abort.
We always talk
We're
to the
gonna be
kids.
pleasant.
No,
And we're gonna be like,
but
we
the
only
kids
sort of hate
do.
you.
I would say the kids do. They'd always get, because we think we're normal, and then we walk in, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden the kids kind of peel back because we don't love people taking pictures of the kids, and they kind of go do their thing. And I started realizing, if they don't understand the heart of this, then they just like, well, why are we doing this? So it now becomes a thing where before we go in anywhere, even if it's at the silos, it's like, hey, these people have come here, so we're gonna host them well. And if I run into them at Target, hey, and I need to take a picture, you guys it's almost like we've tried to make it normal for them that this is our new normal. And once you explain the heart and the why behind it, they get on board. It's just
almost
when
like
we
work.
weren't, they
Yeah.
were confused and a little bit scared, like, why is this lady
Sure.
touching my face? And
Right.
where now they understand it, and it is something that I feel like they've adapted to. And I think the way they've handled this is, they're kind of like our heroes. Like you just
Sure.
watch them and they're like, kids are just resilient, they're
Yes.
tough.
Yeah.
But they're also kind, and they don't have a million filters they have to filter things through. They just see it as, that's a person who wants a picture. That's fun. It's just,
Yeah.
I don't know, they've handled it so well.
Seems like an extension of work to them to some extent. When we're out and something like that happens, they just realize basically mommy and daddy are working when we go and do these pictures, or if we chat with folks for a
Right.
minute. But I appreciate you saying that we've done a good job, because we have to have done a good job. When this is all said and done with those kids, we'll trade all of this and move to some mountain cabin in Tennessee tomorrow, hang out with Taylor Swift maybe, I don't know. But before we look up and find out that what we've done here has somehow adversely affected those kids. And to your point, it's definitely that they know that this is not, average or not normal, quote unquote, but I would argue our life wasn't going to be average or normal regardless. So this has definitely amplified that and made things a little bit more complicated. But for us and the kids, it's just like, y'all, it's us. It's us versus the world. Gaineses do hard things. We can make it, no matter what, if we'll kind of stick together. And I think that somehow the backbone of some of those philosophies that we've instilled in these kids back when we were just completely broke, I think will prove, and here's the awesome part of this. I mean, the proof is not in the pudding. These kids got to go to school and go graduate from school and go to college potentially and go off and start their careers and become family people of their own. Then we can step back and say, we did it. The proof's in the pudding. We're still in the process of this whole thing. And I think just the fact that we know for a fact if any of this stuff were to make it impossible for us to raise these kids right, we would abandon it, and I think they know that. I think they feel that.
Well, you showed your priorities when you walked away from the most popular show on television to make your family a priority. So there's that. Yeah. I want to ask.
That wasn't an easy decision. I mean,
I'm sure.
We wrestled with some counselors, for lack of a better term, that sort of helped us articulate, do we want to do this or not? And I would say the overwhelming majority of those people said, you do what you want to do, but make no mistake, when you turn that television show off, all of this other stuff will come crumbling down. And Joe and I knew that that was a very real possibility. And we both said, our kids, our marriage, our life is worth all of this stuff basically going away. And we kind of mourned it. I mean, it was a sad season to where we were like, I think this is going to be over. And instead, when we turned the television off, in some irony, the exact opposite occurred. I mean, we got invited to that Times 100 event a year and a half after the last episode had aired. So how we are still relevant in that way without the television show really speaks volumes to that us being real to who we were was more important than that television show being broadcast to millions of people every week, And that's encouraging. I mean, I think if we could all take the lesson, and Joe talks about this in the magazine, it's like if we would all be who God made us to be and actually walk out in that, I think the world would be a whole lot better place. But the problem is we all become who our parents wanted us to be, or we become what society tells us we have to be, instead of who we were supposed to be. And I think that the television show was a bit of an example of like, hey, who we're supposed to be is not on television for a season, and this is probably all going to come crumbling down the second we make this decision. And for that ironic and complete opposite reality to have occurred is pretty powerful testimony to just be yourself, man. Being yourself is more powerful than whatever it is that everybody's telling you have to do or you're supposed to do,
That's
any
so
of that
well
make any sense?
Yeah, it's very well said.
How's my hair?
Good.
Good.
Your hair's hanging in tight.
All right, good.
Well, you did the opposite of kind of go away and have it all crumble down. You got your own TV network now, Joanna. I mean, my goodness.
Oh, man.
It launches next year.
When he says that,
I mean,
it's the opposite feeling that I have about Taylor Swift. The one is like, oh, stop, I'm so excited. The other was like, oh, stop, so much work, so much stuff.
So when they came to you and said, we don't just want to give you another show, here's an idea, we want to give you 24 hours a day to play with. What was your reaction to that?
That whole process was interesting because stepping away and kind of reevaluating, hey, what are we doing? What are we supposed to be doing? That period of time was so good for us and our family. And then, even if there was anything on the table during that time, we'd say, we don't want to hear about it. We're really trying to just regroup, relax. We don't want to hear nothing. We want to kind of things to stay quiet. And then when that year kind of ended, we would look at all these opportunities, and some were just like really like do a show here on this in this category or do this. The network thing was like, oh, that's a network? Like that's a huge honor, but man, we were just thinking, do we do another fixer-upper type thing? But when the network, that thing just kept coming back to us like, that's a lot of work. And I kept thinking about the magazine and how involved I am with that and how that's an everyday thing. I mean, that's why I go to work right now. It's just like how we get this magazine, how do we roll it out? Every issue, I kept thinking the network's gonna be like that, but on steroids. And so, but for whatever reason, we both just thought, hey, it's not about us. It's not about having 24 hours of Chip and Jo. It's about hey, there are so many people out there that have these stories that need to be told. They're authentically doing things they are passionate about. How do we get that somewhere? It's we didn't want it to be about one show over here, which was kind of the same. When you do the math, you're like, that's a lot easier, that's still a huge impact, and that just involves us, it's quick and easy. This was like, oh, that's gonna be hard work. People were saying, don't do it. Literally, that was the big scary monster that said, don't touch that. But of course, you tell us that, and we're like, well, interesting, let's look into this one.
Here we are again.
Yeah,
sure.
But with the network, the idea that now we get to highlight these people that are doing things that they're passionate about, that they're just something about that, I think, we just got excited. Like, hey, this isn't going to be the Chip and Jo Network. This is going to be, yes, we want to do some stuff, but we also think there's so many great stories to be told.
Sure.
And if we get to have the platform to tell those stories, that's a huge honor.
Absolutely. And we looked at it as a business. It became a business deal for both of us. And the business, I would almost say, was incubated in the magazine. And watching Jo come to life, building that magazine every quarter was a real fun thing for me to experience, because again, she didn't have to be on camera. She didn't have to do the dog and pony show. She literally just sat in an office, thought about each of those pages, poured her heart and soul into the content, and then by the time you got a hold of the magazine and you thumbed through it, that same feeling I think some people felt with the show, I felt reading the magazine as a layperson. I mean, I just sat there and thumbed through the magazine going, I don't know, there's something different about this. I love it. So my point is, as I watched the business evolution occur with the magazine, it really became pretty clear to me that we could translate this to a 24-hour cable network. And I think that, to Joe's point, there's stories that we're dying to tell. There's people that we've already met that we're like, it's terrible, Willie, because I'm doing it like everybody that's like on the inside of y'all's business industry, literally are like, Chip, don't tell people that. Because I meet people and I'm like, listen, man, I don't want to go on and on, but you were going to be stupid. I mean, you were going to be crazy rich, fame, all your wildest dreams are going to come true. And that's just from our experience. I mean, we can't speak for everybody, but trust me, this is going to be an amazing deal.
You're going to make a good TV executive.
Well,
that's what they tell you.
Oh my
Is
gosh.
that what everybody, well, that's what everybody's like, bro, that you're being just like everybody else in the industry, because that's a lie. Remember when that headshot person told you, hey, come to the mall, it's going to be this amazing experience? You're sounding a little bit like that, good. But all that to say is just like when we see these stories, we're like, this is going to work, man. I don't think that story is being told that way. And I can't wait for our network to be able to communicate those points to the audience. And I think it's gonna be a huge hit. I cannot wait. It's almost like I hope the cable industry survives long enough for us to launch this freaking network, because if we do, and if it does, I think this is going to change things. I think people are going to look at television differently, and I don't mean to say because of what we've done for television in that way, but I just mean I think that the authenticity piece has been messed with.
Yeah.
You watch every show and it's about a doctor or a lawyer or a crime thing, and it's like, great, I'm sure there's a market for that, but God, there's got to be a market for just a sincere, true story about a sincere, true couple doing some real thing. And even when I say couple, it doesn't have to be a couple. We've got examples of people that are just doing things that are completely unrelated to design or construction, maybe entrepreneurialism or something that they've done for a community. But it's just like, we can't wait to tell these stories. And I think that piece of the equation has just been desperately missing from the market.
And I think back to even your question about the hotel, like, when we step back and we can see it, like the original intent of this place and what it was, and just the ballroom and all that stuff, I think for us, we love that back to the basics thing. Like, what was it back then? Even when we bought the silos, we stood on the grounds and said, what was the life that used to be here? Sure. What can we do to kind of bring that life back? I think with television, when you think about the original intent, I think of my dad in the 50s sitting around with his 9 brothers and sisters watching, whatever was on then. Was it the Ed Sullivan Show?
Sure.
And that was time well spent. It was family, it was together, it was watching the tube and turning it off and going to bed. Over time, it's become, I think, just something very different. And now, where we're sitting today, you've got your computer, you've got your phone, you've got there's so many different things that now people are watching these things in all different corners of their home. It's no longer about, let's get in front of the television as a family, let's be together, and let's you know, have this moment together as a family or as friends. And I think for us, we want the network to feel like it's time well spent. When you come to this channel, which sounds so weird, when you come to this channel, that you leave not feeling sick, like you've binge watched something or like, oh, but instead going, I want to go do something now. I'm inspired to go risk. I'm inspired to go do something I'm passionate about. And that it was time well spent, whether it was with your spouse, your kids, by yourself, that it just feels like, hey, there's just something here that feels different.
Well, we talked about why your show works. I think it's that. It's the fact that I can sit with my 12-year-old daughter who loves you and wants to be you when she grows up, and my mom, who's 73 years old, and has decided she's moving from New York City to Waco, Texas, because of the two of you. But that's your point, is a family can sit and watch a show and learn something and feel good about it. So I'm sure you'll succeed. Congrats on everything, guys. I appreciate the time. It's always good to see you.
Thank you.
Great to see
you. You guys are the
you.
best.
Amazing to have
You
you
are
in
the
Waco,
best.
Texas, Willie.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I can't wait to come back and see the finished product.
I know.
Yes,
we'll have
sir.
a room for you.
Okay,
Right in the
good.
corner, it's the one with the
The
fireplace.
Geist suite.
Number 84.
84.
84.
Don't
Tight
forget
end.
that. That's actually
I was going to say, that's a lineman, defensive or offensive, one or the other. You were
outside
tight end.
linebacker, tight end.
I love it.
Yeah, receiving
Number
tight end.
84.
I want to get my hands dirty
All
blocking.
right, I understand. I had that feeling.
Sweet.